Let me tell you the history of the development of the automobile industry in Germany. It all started in 1864, when the German inventor Siegfried Marcus invented the first car with an internal combustion engine. However, the first truly successful car is considered to be the Benz Patent-Motorwagen, developed in Mannheim in 1885 by Carl Benz. Although at first, to Benz's great disappointment, no one wanted to believe that the car was capable of covering long distances, and this created difficulties in finding financing to start production. Therefore, to prove the real practicality of this development, Benz went to a rather original marketing move. In August 1888, his wife Bertha Benz decided to visit her mother and chose her husband's invention. So she drove about 60 miles from Mannheim to Pforzheim and back. And thus, it was proven that a horseless carriage is capable of covering long distances. And Benz, thanks to such advertising, found the necessary investors and began production of his car. Also, around the same time that Benz was testing his invention, Gottlieb Daimler developed his own version of the car, on the basis of which the Daimler company of the same name was later founded. And before the merger of these two companies in 1926, Daimler would be one of the main competitors of the Benz company. It is worth noting here that, by modern standards, these were small enterprises, and the entire German industry produced only a few thousand cars each year. First of all, this was due to the fact that before Henry Ford and his Model T entered the market, the car itself was a rather expensive premium product that only very wealthy citizens could afford. And this premiumness was associated with the high cost of producing the car itself, which was assembled by hand and mainly on individual orders. And this situation persisted until the 20s of the 20th century. Let me just remind you that Ford first introduced the assembly line mass production system in 1913. Then World War I began, and after it ended, the German economy faced economic problems, such as hyperinflation, which significantly hindered the development of the young industry. And against the background of these economic problems, the Benz and Daimler companies decided to merge. In addition, two American companies entered the German market at once. In 1925, Ford opened a German subsidiary, Ford Werke, and General Motors acquired the German company Opel in 1929. And it was precisely the need to compete with American companies and the penetration of the idea of mass production into Europe that forced German manufacturers to change production methods. Thus, in 1928, Daimler began to transfer the production of individual body parts from manual production to mass production, using deep drawing presses. And in the early 1930s, the full introduction of the conveyor system for car body production in Sindelfingen took place. Nevertheless, despite the change in production methods, German car manufacturers continued to focus on the production of premium cars, mainly luxury cars and sports cars. Later, the Great Depression dealt a very heavy blow to the automotive industry, as a result of which many small manufacturers simply disappeared. It was easier for larger companies, but even they had to unite to save their business. Thus, in 1932, the four car manufacturers in the country created a joint venture known as Auto Union. Also, against the background of economic problems created by the Great Depression, the Nazi Party came to power, which also contributed to the development of the automotive industry. Being a big fan of cars, the Nazi leader immediately noticed that due to the concentration of the auto industry on the production of premium cars, the country had a rather low level of motorization, especially when compared to the United States. And so he suggested that manufacturers create the first people's car, which in German sounds like Volkswagen. He wanted a car that every German family could afford and which would cost no more than 1,000 Reichsmarks. Later, it became clear that none of the manufacturers were ready to offer a car at such a price, considering it too low. And not wanting to give up on his idea, he ordered to create a factory at state expense and to build a city near the factory for the factory workers, which is now called Wolfsburg. The contract for the development of the car was awarded to Ferdinand Porsche. And so in 1937, the first German car for the mass market appeared, the Volkswagen Beetle. And although from the very beginning the car project and the company itself were commercially unviable and supported by government subsidies, over time this company would turn into the largest company in Germany. Then World War II began and most automakers shifted their production to military needs. After the end of the war, according to the Morgenthau Plan, the Allies initially planned to leave Germany without heavy industry at all. Therefore, they began dismantling German production facilities. In the automotive industry, such a fate befell the BMW plant in Munich, whose equipment the Americans took as reparations. Daimler also lost all its foreign assets, but they managed to preserve several production facilities in the territory controlled by the Allies. A similar fate befell all the factories that ended up in the Soviet occupation zone. All of them were dismantled and taken away as reparations for the damage caused by the German troops. Although, on the other hand, some companies managed to resume their activities. General Motors returned to the country, regaining control over Opel. And although they lost the plant in Brandenburg, because it was already Soviet territory, they decided to restore the destroyed plant in Rüsselsheim. Daimler also received a contract for the production of vans for the police, ambulances, and the delivery of humanitarian aid. At the same time, as part of the post-war recovery, quite interesting changes took place in the industry. Leading automobile companies began to be bought by entrepreneurs who had recently been accused of having connections with the Nazis. For example, entrepreneur Friedrich Flick, who was sentenced to 7 years in prison for war crimes during World War II, was released early in 1950. And after his release, he was able to regain control of his assets and immediately sold them. In return, he bought 40% of the shares in Daimler-Benz, becoming its largest shareholder. The example of Günther Quandt is also interesting. He was also arrested for collaborating with the Nazis, but was later acquitted. And when BMW was on the verge of bankruptcy, the Bavarian government, which took part in saving the company, agreed with Günther's son, Herbert Quandt, that he would buy this company. And we can also mention Ferdinand Porsche, who was also sentenced to prison together with his son. And after his release, his son, also named Ferdinand, regained control of his father's car development business and later created a new car manufacturer on its basis, the Porsche Company. Separately, we can mention the Volkswagen Company. Despite the fact that this company was partially privatized, in 1960, the Volkswagen Law was passed. And according to this law, no private shareholder had more than 20% of the votes, even if he had more shares. At the same time, the law set the minimum for making a decision at 80%, and this actually gave the government of Lower Saxony, which had 20.2%, the opportunity to block any decisions of the company. And the effect of this law will remain until 2009. Thus, in the 60s, the core of German automobile companies was formed, which would determine the development of the automotive industry in Germany in the coming decades.